Have you ever had the problem when painting trees, bushes, shrubs and grass and you use green to paint that, obviously, but then you look at your final painting and everything just kind of looks the same? I have a system that I use for mixing a whole bunch of different greens that I can then use in my paintings. So I make these color charts to show the relationship between the colors. And then I'll also show you in the video how to use this chart to go and mix a lot of different greens to use in your next painting. I start off by drawing a grid. I chose to make my grid 9 boxes wide and to make the 9 boxes in the middle row the tallest. I then added 5 rows above that and 5 below. I'll show you why I did it this way in a bit. It will all make sense. Then I had the brilliant idea to line everything with acrylic ink and to use a ruler to keep my lines straight. As you can see, this was not the smartest idea that I've ever had, and it obviously didn't work. I then decided to paint over my grid with some acrylic gesso to prepare the area for paint and also to tune out those harsh black lines that I created with the ink. It actually took 2 layers to get everything looking kind of neutral so that I can paint over that. But if you're using pencil, like I'm using in the next 3 grids, 1 layer should be fine. Now it's time to mix the greens. I'm using cadmium yellow, a pale hue, so it's very close to lemon yellow, but the different names for it will differ by brand. And for the blue, I'm using cyan. Then it's really simple. In the first box from the right, I just paint pure yellow. After that, I take a little bit of cyan and I mix it thoroughly with some yellow. I then paint it in the box right next to the yellow. I then take a little bit of cyan, mix it into that mixture to create a slightly more green color. I then paint it in the box right next to the previous box. I repeat this process, adding a little bit more blue every time that I mix the color to create a gradient going all the way to the cyan to the left. At this point, we have 9 boxes that are colored, and this means that we have 7 different shades of green already, because I'm not counting the yellow and the blue, because it's not green. Now, let's turn it up a notch. I take my titanium white. I will mix each of these main colors in the larger boxes, and that's why I wanted the boxes to be larger, because they're the main colors that we're working off of. I will mix each of these main colors with titanium white to create a gradient going lighter the further down we go. So let me just show you what I mean with this. I'm going to show you with the yellow. I take the yellow and then I add a little bit of white to it, mix it up properly and paint it below the pure yellow. I then add a little bit more white to that mixture and paint it below that color. So it's exactly the same process that we had going from yellow to blue. We just have it going from yellow down to pure white now. But I'm not actually going to go all the way to pure white because I don't think that's necessary. After I finish off the yellow column, I go to the column to the left of that. So it's the super light yellowy green. I then add a little bit of white, paint it in, add more white, paint it in below that. I'm pretty sure you get the picture. So let me just finish off with these white colors and then we can move on to the next step. This feels a little bit tedious, I'm going to be honest, but it's actually a really great exercise in mixing colors and matching colors. Now that I'm done with this, we need to turn it up even more. These colors here are fairly bright and saturated, so I feel like we need to tone the colors down a little bit to get some more muddy looking greens. To tone any color down, you mix it with the color opposite to it on the color wheel. For green, this would be red. So I'm using a cadmium red to mix in. You can really use any red, it will still create different shades of muddier looking green. Now I do exactly the same with the red as I was doing with the white. I have my main color in the large box and then I add a little bit of red to it and paint it just above that. And I add a little bit more red to it and paint it just above that. And I continue this process with all of the greens that I have mixed and also with the yellow and the blue just for reference. Now this is super simple to do, and we already have 77 greens to use because there are 7 greens that we have in columns, and then we multiplied with the 11 rows that we have to get to 77. But what if we add another blue into the mix? And this is exactly what I'm doing now. I chose cobalt blue for this because it's more of a purpley blue than cyan. We can now replicate this entire process using cobalt blue and still cadmium yellow pale hue. So let me show you this process. We mix the greens again, this time with the cobalt blue. I have found that it works a little bit better for me if I work from 2 sides. So I start off with the cobalt blue going towards the middle with the greens, and then I start off from the yellow side going towards the middle with the greens, and I make them meet in the middle. This just creates a more even looking gradient. Then I mix these greens with titanium white again, taking the gradient down to the bottom, and then I mix them with cadmium red again, taking it all the way to the top. And so we have completed another set of colors. The amount of greens that we have now totals to 154. If we now add another yellow into the mix, we can double the amount of colors that we have from 154 up to 308. Then you have a total of 308 different shades of green to use in your next painting. I'm using a dark hued cadmium yellow now, and you can see that it creates muddier looking greens. This is because the dark hue leans more to the red side of the spectrum. So we still have a yellow, but we have a more reddish looking yellow. It's almost as I have already added a tiny bit of red to my hue before I even start mixing the greens. On camera, the differences between all of these shades may look a little bit less impressive or a little bit less accurate, but I assure you there are many differences between all of these shades. Some of the shades do look similar, so I guess if you count and compare really meticulously, you might have to eliminate some of the shades because they will be duplicate, but I'm still convinced that we have at least 150 or 200 shades of green, if not more. So now that you have all of these colors to use, how do you actually go about using them? It's really quite simple. To paint any tree, you need to choose 3 to 5 different colors. You need a highlight color, that's the lightest. Then you need a mid-tone color, that's somewhere in between. And then you need a shadow color, that is the darkest color. And if you want, you can choose a color between the mid-tone color and the shadow color, putting another one here, and a color between the highlight color and the mid-tone color, putting it somewhere between here. Then you have 5 in total. I like to choose the colors in a diagonal from blue to yellow, so as the color gets lighter, it gets more yellow as well. That looks really good for me. But you can mix it up and get some really funky looks. To use these colors, you just follow the simple steps that I outlined in this video right here.